Okay, so this is the update to the Pixel Perfect game. So just wanted to go over some of the stuff that's been added in, and I'll show some changes based off of the time I had, the feedback from the instructor, and also some talking to people from my persona groups. First new things is kind of got the placeholder for the leaderboard would look like here, the different levels and the different times when people would be their score recorded for how long it took them to do something. And then options, just to show what the basic options would be, to be able to turn sound effects up and down, background music, and turn off blood and gore. So from there, the other thing that I've changed are the new game, or the starting game types. Based off the instructor's feedback, it would be, she said it would be interesting to see if they were also kind of medieval themed. So I went with Squire, which is the basic normal game, Knight, and Crusader. And that is the big changes made to the opening screen, and I'll go over the changes for the gameplay and show feedback loops here in a second. Okay, so here we have the main tutorial level. Some things you may notice from the previous builds is that I've changed Pixie from a 3D to a 2D sprite. I interviewed about 3 different people and showed them both the sprite and the 3D version of Pixie, and general feedback seemed to agree that they found the sprite version to be cuter and to fit better with the idea of a platformer, is something they're more willing to accept. So the tutorial wizard, I've kind of given his name some embolding to make it stand out clearer. I'll try to go slowly through his various dialogue text. He basically just talks down to the player about their skills and explains a little bit of what's going on with the Pixie. So here again, the tutorial wizard is here to basically teach the player how to play the game and not kill themselves over and over again. So the first thing he's going to let the player do is use the left and right button. And before he lets you do this, obviously you'll see there's no other UI on the screen. Pixie's unit icon kind of popped up at the top when he announced who she was, but in a moment here that we have our move buttons. When we use those, we can move left, we can move right. Her animation walks pretty good. I don't think she's really sliding for speed. So we've encountered our first kind of in-game element. It's the save spot, which now actually has a visual icon. If you noticed before I ran up to it, it had kind of a red gem behind the angel's head. Now it has a green to let me know that I've hit it. The wizard will kind of, again, install your intelligence, but explain that this is a save spot. I can't move while he's talking, and the buttons have become inactive to help the player not get ahead. It basically explains that when you die, one of your cloned sisters will pick up where you left off, and now he's going to enable the jump ability, and now we have the jump button, which now appeared for the first time. And we'll go through a very simple non-threatening jump situation where there's nothing that could hurt her. Also, you can see here before I pass the save spot that the gem is red. Now it's gone green, and the wizard will basically mock you again, but this time he wants you to try to do something a little more complicated. So he's going to turn on the death counter. He explains that they want to track how often you die. And now we have the jump button again, but we also have more dangerous area. You can see there's a bunch of objects that would be considered kill objects, spikes and lava. So we'll show what happens when a player jumps on those for their feedback. Pixie turns red, blood will appear on the ground, and then we get a quick little animation where she dies and then returns to where she left off, and the death counter at the top will track how many times she's died. The animation looks somewhat similar for jumping into water or lava, except there's no blood, because that would either float away or burn off. So I'll get through this area using just the jump button, trying not to overwhelm the player with new mechanics, since these 3 mechanics are going to be so important, and that was a little more complicated. Jump. So now we'll get to an area where the player can't physically jump over something. So the wizard is going to explain that because the great evil has had so many generations of heroes to perfect his evil, essentially, he's learned ways to make it impossible for a normal hero to get through. So jumping and moving right isn't going to be enough, as the wizard points out. So he gives the player the ability to reverse gravity, saying that if you can't jump over something, give it a try. And now the reverse gravity button will appear for the first time. So the first section the player will be able to use this on only requires them to reverse gravity in order to be able to transverse the area. And as you can see, when the player reverses gravity, there's a short cooldown where the button remains inactive, and that lets them know they can't do it any longer. You'll also notice that when they're not on the ground, the jump button is becoming transparent, so that lets the player know they can't jump twice in a row. So here we come to another save spot. Wizard kind of makes fun of you again, and then basically tells you to try out a more difficult area. This one is the first area which will combine jumping and the switching of gravity, so the player would have to switch and then jump to get through. And this is our last real save spot, and he's going to enable the ability to shoot your lance. It says that up ahead there's a beholder monster for you to kind of test your lance on. It doesn't fight back at this point because I didn't want to overwhelm the player with stuff. So here we see the enemy player. If I bumped into it, it would kill her, but I can also shoot it. He gets a little animation for shooting it, and on roughly the third time it should despawn. And that is all of the core elements that the tutorial teaches the player. The teacher kind of asked if I could get a chance to get the animals being released here at the end of the level, but that wouldn't ordinarily appear in the tutorial. It would just be some kind of doorway to go out into the real world. And I also kind of run out of time to be able to get that in. I got a lot of stuff in that wasn't originally in, like the new lighting elements, the background, the blood effects, the completed safe spot sprites, which are nice, and then, oh, I hit that spike. But that's basically everything that's added in that the teacher was looking for. So the next thing I'll do is have my wife kind of give the UI a test play and get her feedback, and then I will submit this video. Okay, so this is the update to the Pixel Perfect game. So just wanted to go over some of the stuff that's been added in, and I'll show some changes based off of the time I had, the feedback from the instructor, and also some talking to people from my Persona groups. First new things is kind of got the placeholder for the leaderboard would look like here, the different levels and the different times when people would be their score recorded for how long it took them to do something. And then options, just to show what the basic options would be, to be able to turn sound effects up and down, background music, and turn off blood and gore. So from there, the other thing that I've changed are the new game, or the starting game types. Based off the instructor's feedback, it would be, she said it would be interesting to see if they were also kind of medieval themed. So I went with Squire, which is the basic normal game, Knight, and Crusader. And that is the big changes made to the opening screen, and I'll go over the changes through the gameplay and show feedback loops here in a second.